Hello.
Hi, Archie. How are you? Let me share my screen with you. Where we left off was looking here at King Arthur and his knights at the round table. And this picture, it is one of the earliest paintings or drawings of King Arthur and his knights at the round table. And it was in a book that was written, I can't remember.
We cannot read that.
We can't.
We cannot read that because it's not English.
That's right. But isn't it neat how in the margins of the pages, they would do a lot of artwork? That would take a lot of time to do that.
Not a lot.
And I think back then, maybe 1,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago, they did not have a printing press. That means they couldn't just do the drawing one time and then let a machine make copies of it. Every single page had to be hand painted, hand lettered, hand lettering, hand drawn. So this would be the only one, this one right here is the only one that would look like this exactly, because they did not have a machine that could make a copy of it. We finished here where Annie and Jack were talking to King Arthur and to Queen Guinevere. And we see that the queen smiled, but King Arthur did not. And then Morgan asked the king, do you remember Jack and Annie? You met them last summer in her library. Okay, so this is what the king says. Now remember, he will sound sad because there is no joy in his kingdom right now. He says, indeed, I shall never forget them. King Arthur said softly. Greetings, Annie. Greetings, Jack. How do you come to be in Camelot on this bleak night? Bleak here is a very important word. Bleak is an adjective that tells us what kind of night it is. Bleak
It is very dark.
Bleak does not mean dark. Bleak means no hope. Bleak is a feeling of there is no hope. There is nothing, we cannot hope for anything good to happen. So it's a really sad feeling. We came in the magic treehouse, said Annie. A shadow crossed the king's face. He looked at Morgan and she says, no, your majesty, I did not use my magic to bring them here. Hi, everyone. I am pausing the video here because I am going to replace the next 3 minutes of the video with a new video that I am making on the next day, which is today. So you can see I look different. The reason I am doing this is because yesterday, when I was talking about this part of the story that we just read, I gave away some information that the reader should not know yet because we are not going to find it out until the next page. So I don't want to give that away because that takes away some of the fun. So I'm going to re-record it. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, we just read an interesting phrase that we use in English sometimes that is a little bit hard to understand. We read that a shadow crossed the king's face. What does that mean? Well, a shadow is something that is dark because it's behind the sun or behind the light. So it's an area of darkness. When we are talking about someone's face, we are often talking about not just what they look like, but how they are feeling. And dark feelings, when we say that someone looks at something darkly, those would be feelings that are not happy feelings. We have talked about how we can have feelings that are high and low, full, empty, going up, going down, lifting, sinking. Also, we can use light and dark. So dark feelings or dark emotions would be feelings that are not happy. They're more, we could also say light and heavy. They're heavier. They feel like something is just sitting on our shoulders, making us so that we're weighted down. It's not so easy to jump around and be excited. Dark emotions might be sadness or grief or worry or anger. So when it says that a shadow crosses someone's face, it means for just a moment, there's a flicker of emotion that kind of passes across the face. So maybe the face has no emotion on it, and then for just a moment, you can see someone looks like angry or sad or something, and then maybe it changes again. Maybe it's very just for a brief moment. So they can go from one kind of expression, it can be maybe no expression or sad or happy, but then for just a moment, the expression changes. Sometimes we see a person have like smile, right? And so you can see that expression change on their face. So a shadow, if a shadow crosses King Arthur's face, that means for just a moment, you can see on his face that he is not happy. He could be even angry. And so that should give us, the reader, just that one phrase, seeing that a shadow crossed his face, that should give us, the reader, a question of, what just happened that made the king respond in a way that shows a strong, negative, dark emotion, which could be worry or fear or anger? What would do that? So we don't know. Now we will find out on the next page. So I'm not going to tell you right now, but we can be a detective and look for some clues. And some of the clues are going to come right after that sentence. And so we can read a little bit and then go back and then make a good guess or do some inferring. Okay, so let's see, right here is where the shadow crossed his face. Well, let's see what just happened right before that. Right before that, this happened first. This is when Annie said, "We came in the magic tree house." So Annie just told him how they got here, because we can see before that he says, "How do you come to be in Camelot?" Okay, how did you get here? And she said, "We came in the magic tree house." Well, what does that mean? It means, okay, they did not come on an airplane or a boat. They did not walk there. They came in a magic tree house. Well, how does a magic tree house come? A magic tree house comes using magic, right? That's part of the word, magic tree house. It comes by magic. Because if it doesn't use magic, how can a tree house just disappear from a tree in one place in Pennsylvania and then appear someplace else just like that? So we know that Annie is just saying, we came by the magic tree house, and we know that that means by magic. Okay, so then the next thing that happens is the shadow crosses his face. Okay, and that's our mystery. That's like, why does he care about that? Why does that make, why does that change the expression on his face? And then the next thing that happens is Morgan says, "No, Your Majesty, I did not use my magic to bring them here," she said. Perhaps a bit of magic still lingers in the treehouse, and it traveled on its own. Okay, so she is talking about the magic, right? So she's saying to him, I did not use my magic to bring them here. And then she said, perhaps a bit of magic still lingers in the treehouse, right? She said maybe the treehouse has its own magic. It's still there. There's still a little bit left in the treehouse, and it could just bring them all by itself. So Morgan knows the king, and Morgan sees that shadow cross his face. And so she probably knows why he is upset about hearing what Annie said. And even if we weren't thinking about this word magic, even if we were like, we don't know why the king is upset, we can look and see that Morgan, what is Morgan talking about? So the shadow crosses the king's face, and then he looked at Morgan right here. He looked at Morgan. So whatever he is upset about, he looks at Morgan, and he knows he's kind of sending a message to her without words, just by the expression on his face, by the look on his face. He's kind of sending a message to her. Have you ever been able to tell how someone is feeling? Someone you know really well, just by the look on their face or the look in their eyes? Well, Morgan knows the king well. And so he hears Annie say something. Okay, we came in the magic tree house, and then he looks not happy. And then he looks at Morgan. And then what does she say? She goes, it wasn't my magic. Okay, so she knows that he's talking about what he's upset about is the magic part of the magic treehouse. And so she says, it wasn't my magic. And when she says that, when she says, I did not use my magic, right? Don't look at me. Maybe it was the treehouse has its own magic. That also tells us that the king was looking at her almost like he was saying, you did this. You must have brought them here because you are the one that can make the magic treehouse move around from one place to another place. So he assumes, here's this word, he assumes it was Morgan who used her magic to do it. Assume means you believe you know, you're sure you know who did something or how something happened, even though you actually can't really know for sure, but you just are like, I know who did it. I know how it happened. I don't need any proof. I don't need to figure it out. I just know it. And he kind of looks at Morgan because he's like, Morgan's always the one that moves magic treehouse by magic. So if the magic treehouse came here by magic, she must have done it. He assumes that. Well, he assumed wrong because Morgan's like, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. Don't be mad at me. And even if we are not sure what that dark emotion is, what that shadow is on his face, in the very next sentence from Jack that we're going to talk about in a minute, Jack's going to think to himself, why does King Arthur seem unhappy about the magic tree house? So this one here, which we haven't gotten to yet, but I will go forward just this one sentence. This is number 4. So we can look at these 4 things together, these 4 things that happen. Number 1, Annie says, well, really right before that, King Arthur says, how did you get here? Okay, number 1, Annie says, the magic tree house. Okay, that's how we got here. Number 2, the king has a shadow across his face. That's a dark emotion. That's not a good one. Now, it could be fear or worry or anger or sadness. We can see that Jack realizes the king is unhappy. Now, he looks at Morgan, and that look at Morgan tells us that he thinks, or he assumes, that Morgan is the one who used the treehouse, who used her magic to bring the treehouse here. But then this number 3 is really interesting because Morgan can see the look on the king's face. She can see the shadow cross his face. She can see that he's unhappy. She knows what he's unhappy about. And she knows that it's specifically the magic because she talks about that in her answer to the king. And she can also tell that he thinks she's the one that did it because he looks at her and she says, no, King Arthur, no, I did not use my magic. Perhaps a bit of magic still lingers in the treehouse, but it wasn't me, so don't look at me. Don't assume it was me. Don't accuse me. So this is a very interesting part of the story. And as to exactly why the shadow would cross his face, why he would look, maybe angry at Morgan, well, we're going to find out more about that on the next page. So with that, let's keep reading. I want you to remember that we've talked about a couple different reasons why we might see italic letters. So these letters that look wavy.
Because Jack is thinking.
That's right. So when someone is thinking something and they're not saying it out loud, so no one can hear them except for us, the reader, then the author might change the letters when typing the letters to make them this wiggly kind called italics. So one reason is because they're just thinking them and they're not saying them out loud. And we know that Jack is just thinking them, partly because of the italics and partly this word right here, when it says wondered. Wondered is something we do in our brain. We're just thinking it in our brain. So we're thinking about it. And we also use wondered when what we're thinking is maybe a question. So he's thinking to himself, what's going on? Why does King Arthur seem unhappy about the magic treehouse? King Arthur looked back at Jack and Annie, and he says to them, however you have come, okay, we don't know how you came, but however you have come, you are welcome in my kingdom, he said. He turned to the queen. Guinevere, these are the 2 friends who once gave me hope and courage in a time of need. I think that's kind of important. We find out something here that we want to remember. Jack and Annie had given him hope. Hope is a really great thing to have. It's not fun to not have any hope. Hope is what lets us believe that good things can happen. Hope is what lets us believe that no matter how we are feeling right now, there's going to be some time in the future when we will feel happy, when good things will happen. And so we want to have hope. We want to believe that good things can happen. And courage. Courage is another good thing to have. If we don't have courage, then we will just feel afraid all the time and be scared and nervous and worried all the time. And we will think, no, we don't want to try something new. Maybe something bad will happen. No, we don't want to have hope. Maybe we will feel disappointed. Maybe we will be afraid to get our hopes up. So we want to have courage. Then we can be brave. So hope and courage are 2 really important things to have. And he gave them those things in a time of need. A time of need means there must have been a time in King Arthur's life when he did not have hope and courage, but he needed to have hope and courage. And so Annie and Jack helped him. Okay, Queen Guinevere smiled again, but there was a sad look in her eyes. I have heard much about you, she said. I've heard about you too, said Annie. Allow me to present my knights, said King Arthur. Sir Bors, Sir Kay, Sir Tristram. As the king named each knight, Jack and Annie nodded shyly. Shyly means they're feeling a little shy. The knights nodded at them in return. Jack waited to hear the name Sir Lancelot, the most famous of Camelot's knights, but the king never said it. And finally, Sir Bedivere and Sir Gawain, King Arthur said. The king then turned to 3 empty chairs at the table. And there once sat 3 who are lost to us now, he said. That's a very sad thing to say. That means those 3 empty chairs used to have 3 knights in them, but those 3 knights are now lost to them, which means they can't come back. Lost how? Wondered Jack. You may sit at their places and join our dinner, King Arthur said. Thank you, said Annie. Following Morgan around the table, Jack read the names carved on the backs of the 3 empty chairs. Sir Lancelot, Sir Galahad, and Sir Percival. Jack took off his backpack and sat down in Sir Lancelot's place. That's kind of special. As he sat tall and straight in the heavy wooden chair, Jack looked at the king and his knights. They were not, this is how they're eating. They were gnawing. You see this word that starts with a GN? The way they're eating is to gnaw meat off the bone and slurp wine. So gnawing and slurping are a very messy way to eat. If you go into a restaurant today, people will eat politely. So they will either use chopsticks or a fork and a knife. But they were just picking up the bone with the meat on it and going, very messy, no silverware. And maybe they weren't even eating with their mouth closed, just okay. And then for their wine, for their drink, slurping is a really noisy way to drink that's not polite. It's like, and it just lets a kind of, that it can, it just doesn't, this would be drinking politely. Okay, you didn't really hear me drinking. Slurping would be like, well, I don't want to do it. I'd get water all over me. You just kind of dump it on your face and it would go, and it would be noisy and messy. So what it tells us here is that these men are they're not eating in a way that we would think is very polite. Okay, so it says here, they were eating without manners. If you use manners, you are polite. Without means you don't use manners. So they are not being polite. But it also says they're eating without delight. That means they're not enjoying it. Delight is the feeling of enjoying something, when something makes you happy. So if they are without delight, that means even though they are eating, they are not enjoying the food. It is not making them happy. So let's see. They were gnawing meat off bones and slurping wine from heavy goblets. Goblet is a type of glass that you can drink from. They ate without manners or delight. Jack really wanted to take notes. He reached into his pack under the table and pulled out his notebook and pencil. But before he could write a word, a serving boy brought more food. Jack quickly put his things away. The boy set a greasy slab of beef on a soggy piece of bread in front of him. The food looked terrible. a greasy slab of beef on a soggy piece of bread. Do you know what the word soggy means?
Yes.
It means wet. And I don't think I would want to eat a piece of bread that someone just, poured water on. The food looked terrible. Not much of a Christmas feast, huh? Annie said in a low voice. Jack shook his head. Annie leaned close to Morgan and whispered so King Arthur wouldn't hear. What happened to the 3 lost knights? She asked. This is what Morgan told them. After Mordred's dark wizard cast his spell, the king sought help from the magicians of Camelot. Morgan said quietly. So a magician would be someone who can do magic. Sought means he tried to find or he tried to get help. He was looking for it. They, the magicians, told him he must send his knights on a quest to the other world to recapture our kingdom's joy. A quest is when you go looking for something. You have a mission, something that you need to find. So the magicians had said to King Arthur, you need to send some of your knights on a quest to this place to recapture or get back the joy that had been stolen from them. And Jack said, what's the other world? Said Jack. That's a good question because we don't know what this place is. It has a capital O, which means it's the name of a place. But what is the other world? So what it is here, it is an ancient, that means very, very old, an ancient enchanted land beyond the edge of the earth, said Morgan. The place where all magic first began. So do you think this place really exists? What do you think? Do you think there can be a land beyond the edge of the earth? Well, if there's an edge of the earth, that means the earth is flat. And if you walk along the top of the earth and get to the edge, you can fall off. Is that possible?
No.
No, because the earth is not flat. It is
round,
right? But they did not know that back then. And they thought the earth was flat. And they thought that if you could just walk along the earth until you got to the edge of it, you could go boo and fall off. And so they're saying that the other world is beyond the edge of the earth. Beyond, you have to go past the edge of the earth and you will find this very old enchanted land. That means it's magical. There is a spell on it. And they're saying that's the place where all magic first began. So do you think this is true facts about Earth, or do you think this is using your imagination in a pretend story? Do you think this is fact or fantasy?
fantasy.
That's right. Wow, whispered Annie. The king chose his 3 bravest knights to journey there, said Morgan. When they did not come back, Arthur turned against his magicians. He blamed magic for all of Camelot's woes. You see this word here, woe?
Yes.
Woe would be kind of the bad things that happen to you that cause you problems. And so he had asked his magicians for help. They said, send your knights. He sent his bravest knights, 3 of them. They did not come back. So he kind of blamed the magicians who are the ones that do magic. So he blamed all of magic. He says, but let me see. He turned against his magicians. He blamed magic for all of Camelot's woes. Hence, he has banned magic of any kind from the kingdom forever. This word here, banned, means he will not allow any magic to happen. That's why he was so concerned when he thought Morgan had used magic to bring Jack and Annie to Camelot, because he had given an order saying, no magic allowed in my kingdom anymore. I forbid it. I say no more. He banned it forever. And so Annie asked Morgan, she goes, but you're a magician, whispered Annie. Did the king turn against you too? And Morgan said, Arthur and I have a long friendship, said Morgan. He has allowed me to stay in the castle as long as I promise not to practice the art of magic ever again. So Morgan says here that he, Arthur, King Arthur, has allowed Morgan to stay in the castle as long as she promises not to do any magic ever again. Okay, so Morgan can do magic. And the king had said, no more magic allowed in my kingdom. But because he and Morgan are friends, he said, okay, Morgan, you can stay, but you have to promise never do magic in my kingdom ever again. And so she had promised, and that's why when we go back here, that's why a shadow had crossed the king's face, because the kids had just said, we came in the magic tree house, which is using magic. So he's not happy. A shadow crossed his face. And then he turns to Morgan thinking, well, you must have done it. He assumed that she did it. Who else would do it? He can't think of anyone else who could possibly do it, just her. So he assumed that it was her. But he assumed wrong, because she said, no, 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 I did not use my magic to bring
because it's not her.
Right, but they don't know that yet. Okay, they don't know that. We have to remember that. We have to always remember, what do the characters know? The characters have not read the book. They don't know the end of the story. So they don't know what has happened. All they know is that it must have been Morgan. She's the only one here who can do magic. And so the king is looking at her, and why is he so upset with her at that idea? Because we find out on the next page, he had said to Morgan, you can only stay in Camelot if you promise to not do magic again. Well, if she had used magic to let Jack and Annie come, the reason a shadow crossed the king's face was he hears that Annie and Jack come by magic. And we now learn here on this page that he has said he has banned magic of any kind from the kingdom forever. But the only person he can think of who could have brought them by magic was Morgan. So he turns and looks at her with a shadow on his face, meaning that he is now looking angry. He's not happy. It's like, And Morgan says, no, 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 it wasn't me. I did not use my magic. Okay. He had assumed it must be her. He couldn't think of anyone else it could be, but he assumed wrong. And she goes, no, 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 it wasn't me. Don't be angry at me. And we know the reason that she said that is because he had said Morgan could only stay in Camelot if she promised to never use magic ever again. A feeling of dread crept over Jack. We need to talk for just a minute about what a feeling of dread is.
I know what it is.
You do? What do you think it is?
It is sad.
Do you think it's a happy feeling or not a happy feeling?
Not a happy feeling.
It's not a happy feeling. A feeling of dread is like, uh-oh, this is not good. This does not feel good. It's a feeling of
Better.
Maybe not hopeless, like bad things are going to happen. He says, so, oops, where's my pointer? So does that mean the magic tree house is? Morgan nodded. Yes, it's banished from Camelot. Banished means it is not allowed. It's not allowed to be in Camelot. It may not be here because it's magic. I'm afraid this will be your last journey and the last time we see each other. Her eyes filled with tears.
No,
Okay.
that was not the last time journey. And this is not the last time they see each other.
Stop giving away the end of the story. Let's see. What? The last time we see each other? Forever? Said Annie. Now here, remember the other reason for using italics is not because we're thinking it, but because—
No, it's not thinking because it is forever.
Right, we're stretching it apart, like stretching a rubber band. We want
Forever.
We want to really emphasize that by saying it more slowly. Before Morgan could answer, the wooden doors swung open with a bang. A wind rushed through the great hall. The torches and candles flamed brighter, making the shadows leap wildly on the walls. Remember, if you're going to open the door from outside, it's going to bring in a gust of wind. Well, if the wind blows on the fire burning in the torch, it will make the fire. So if you open a door, then the wind is going to blow in. When the wind blows on a fire that's burning in the torch, the fire will blow. And remember that any kind of light, whether it's from the sun or a fire, if it is shining on something, it's going to make a shadow. So the only light in there is from these torches. So that's causing lots of shadows. So if the light is waving like this, it's going to make the shadows also wave like that. And that's why they're saying that the shadows leap wildly on the walls. Leap is jump, and wildly is like really a lot. And so the shadows are jumping and moving around the walls like this because the door opened and the wind caused the fire to blow around. And so the shadows are jumping and blowing all over the place, making the whole place seem a little bit more spooky. First, we got to set the scene, right? And talk about how everyone's going to be surprised because the doors swung open with a bang. No one is expecting it. So all of a sudden, boom, the doors bang, they push open, the wind comes in, the fires dance, the shadows jump all over the walls. And then in comes, now we hear, that's what we see, and now we hear hoofbeats. Okay, the sound of hoofbeats filled the room. Think of it like a fast drum. A knight on a huge horse rode through the arched doorway. So everyone must look up and be very surprised. The knight was dressed all in red, from his shining helmet to the long—
It's a Christmas night.
back. Yeah, I see. You see that here. His horse was dressed all in green, from the armor that covered his head to the cloth that hung from his saddle. Oh, wow, breathed Annie. A Christmas night. Now, I could not find a picture of a knight dressed all in red, riding a horse, wearing armor that is all green. Even this horse here is not wearing armor. It looks more like it's ready to be in a parade. But I think that we can see here would be a knight riding in on a horse. So let me go ahead and make my star right here. What color would you like?
All blue. All blue.
Okay. All right, I will go ahead and hit stop share. And we can say, so
So long, Archie.
bye, Archie.